In 2012, I received a phone call from the other side of the world that changed my life. At the time, I was in my Michigan office working as an independent documentary filmmaker and story and script consultant to Hollywood. My script work in the film industry was mostly based on my 2006 Hollywood trade book on story structure, The Moral Premise. On the side, I also produced Catholic apologetic media for television, DVDs, and a few books, which found some modest international distribution. Knowing all this, a man from Australia called and pitched to me a ghost story from West Virginia, of all places, called The Wizard Clip. He thought I should make a movie about it. After the phone call from Australia, I investigated the Wizard Clip story. The information on the internet caught my interest, but I didn't have the money to make even a low-budget horror flick. Yet, when I had a chance, I wrote a screenplay and shopped it to those I knew in Los Angeles. It received some interest, but no funding, of course. A short time later, in 2014, I became curious about the final disposition of Father Dennis Cahill, one of the Catholic priests involved in the Wizard Clip exorcism. There was a lot online about the other characters, but nothing about this critical priest. I intensified my research and traveled to New Orleans, Pittsburgh, Middle Way, West Virginia, and various research libraries and archives. Particularly important was my trip to the Catholic Historical Archives in Baltimore at St. Mary's Seminary, but I could find nothing of significance on Father Dennis Cahill. As I was leaving the Catholic Archives in Baltimore, Tricia Pine, the head archivist, asked if I had found what I was looking for on the whereabouts of the historic Father Dennis Cahill. I told her no. She then mentioned the visit several years earlier of an elderly journalist and historian who was also looking for information on Dennis Cahill. But Dr. Pine was unsure what, if anything, Edith Darrow had found. Tricia was pretty sure Edith was no longer with us because she was so elderly at the time of her visit. Once in my van, I typed Edith's name into my phone's internet search engine. Her name had a unique spelling, and up came a phone number. That night, I took Edith Darrow out to dinner, and we had a revealing conversation. The next morning, after my conversation and dinner with journalist and historian Edith Darrow, and at her direction, I visited the historic Martinsburg Courthouse and discovered what happened to Dennis Cahill. On my drive back home to Michigan, I realized that I didn't have a screenplay. The story was not a movie. It was a novel, a long one, and would take me years to write. And no, I'm sorry, but I can't tell you what happened to Father Dennis Cahill. It would ruin the story. But I will tell you something about the story and the other characters. Wizard Clip Haunting is a late 18th century historical fiction novel that takes place in what is now West Virginia. The story weaves together the tragic and adventurous lives of four main characters. The first is the focus of our story, Adam Livingston, an innovative Pennsylvania flax farmer vexed from early childhood with vague premonitions of tragedies. Adam's first wife, Esther, was a devout Presbyterian who cared for her family and used her talent at the loom to help clothe the poor. She believed their good but meager life was God's blessing. But although Adam deeply loved Esther, he was pretty sure any success they had was due to the hard work that he did. Suddenly, during the harvest, Esther mysteriously dies, and Adam loses their small farm. After his wife's sudden death, Adam and his children migrate to the Shenandoah Valley, where he acquires a much larger farm with great potential. But tragedy strikes when he rebukes Virginia's culture of slavery. Soon, Adam remarries and takes revenge on God for Esther's death by marrying a woman named Mary Ann, who hates all religion. The results are unwelcome and tragic. Woven into Livingston's story is that of a second character, Dennis Cahill, who as a child dodges death in Ireland, becomes a renegade Capuchin priest, lives through the catastrophic New Orleans fire of 1788, joins a commercial vessel as its chaplain, sails past storms and pirates, and arrives in the young United States in search of his calling and a destiny he could never have planned. The third character in Wizard Clip Haunting has come to be known as the Wizard Clip, or the Clipping Wizard, an impatient, murderous Babylonian spirit tasked with Livingston's and Cahill's downfall by edging them ever closer and closer to the gates of hell. The fourth character is the cursed plot of land that absorbs the blood of a murderer and serves as the stage for the wizard's hauntings. After lying fallow for over 100 years, the land finally finds redemption as the Priestfield Pastoral Retreat Center in Middleway, West Virginia, which today you can visit, walk the haunted forested paths, and visit the mysterious stranger's grave whose death triggered the mysterious events of the story. At Wizard Clip Haunting's halfway mark, what in narrative theory is called the moment of grace, the mysterious stranger lodges at the Livingstons' home and in the middle of the night realizes he's going to die. He asks his host to fetch a Catholic priest to hear his confession and give him last rites. But the Livingstons refuse, having promised themselves, in keeping with the times, that no Catholic priest would ever cross the threshold of their house. Being so brutally rebuffed, and before he dies, the stranger curses the Livingstons, their house and farm, and immediately the haunts begin. Strange noises, black vapor, wraiths of horses and wagons, house tremors, and most peculiar, the clipping of crescent moon shapes from anything made from linen. The haunts continue, and Adam soon realizes the disturbances, noises, and the clippings are not practical jokes put on them by neighbors, but by a demon their young daughter Eve calls the Wizard. When Adam reluctantly concedes that the haunts have a supernatural origin, he recruits a variety of ministers to come to the house and exorcise it, but all fail, and the farm becomes the curiosity of the region, with folks just dropping by with both tragic and comedic results. The haunts escalate, especially when a minister shows up, and when a Catholic priest appears, all hell breaks loose. For reasons they don't fully understand, the Livingstons and friends are catapulted along to a final and cataclysmic conclusion. While a work of historical fiction, a great many of the characters and events the novel chronicles are real. In fact, at the request of the first U.S. Bishop, John Carroll, the Livingston haunts were actually investigated by Father and Prince Demetrius Augustine Gallitzin, servant of God. Father Dimitri, being intimately familiar with the Livingston hauntings, wrote at length about all that he observed at the Livingston farm. The chronicle in his own hand was passed around and became so popular that it was lost to history. But history's loss has been my gain, allowing me to boldly go where none before me dared. Thus I have culturally appropriated Father Dimitri's identity and appointed him narrator of the Wizard Clip Haunting novel. I hope he doesn't mind. I do thank him for his work on the book. You can be the judge, but I think he did a wonderful job. Father Demetrius Gallitzin wrote about the Wizard Clip hauntings in a letter that was not lost to history.
After 3 months of investigation, I was soon converted to a full belief of them. No lawyer in a court of justice did more than I, nor procured more than your unworthy servant.
Today, over 200 years later, the village of Middleway continues to celebrate its place in Wizard Clip history with wood block emblems on building fronts depicting a crescent moon, a pair of scissors, and the wizard dressed as a magician in a top hat. The village, to some, is still remembered as Cliptown, and each fall around Halloween, they celebrate their history with the annual Middleway Day Fair. My research into the Wizard Clip events revealed that the hauntings were very much the result of anti-Catholic sentiment in the United States at the time. The angst over Catholicism was brought on by Henry VIII's attack on the Church after Pope Clement VII refused to grant Henry an annulment from Catherine of Aragon. Henry convinced Parliament to pass a series of penal laws that confiscated all Catholic land, monasteries, convents, and possessions, transferred significant wealth from the Catholic Church to the English crown, made the practice of Catholicism in England an act of treason punishable by exile or death, and made Henry the head of the newly formed Anglican Church of England. The penal laws are refined and expanded over the years and implemented in Ireland, which critically imperiled several characters in the Wizard Clip story. The penal laws in England lasted roughly 250 years. Beginning in 1791, they were slowly nullified, but not completely. Today, they allow the spouse of the king or queen to be Catholic, but never the monarch, who must be Protestant. One of my favorite stories of the colonial period was the Maryland experiment. When first founded in 1632, Lord Baltimore saw Maryland as an opportunity to grant religious freedom to Catholics who were persecuted in Anglican England. At first, laws were passed in the Maryland colony to give religious freedom to everyone, but by doing so, the experiment didn't last long. Soon the population of Maryland became predominantly Protestant, and the Catholics were chased out of power. New laws were passed, and Catholics found themselves once again under penal laws. After the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights were ratified in 1791, it still took years for the concept of religious freedom to sort out. As various states banned Catholics from public office, priests were murdered by belligerents, convents were burned, and churches destroyed. It was this belligerent mood that caused the protagonist of Wizard Clip Hauntings, Adam Livingston, and his second wife, Mary Ann, to reject religious persons of any persuasion, especially Catholic priests. It was that rejection that brought on the hauntings and the disturbances, the fright, and death. One of the many surprises while researching the Wizard Clip was the intense conflict between Bishop John Carroll and the priests supposedly under him. Of course, that was the problem. Supposedly. Years before Bishop Carroll was appointed superior of the church in the U.S., independent missionary priests had established Catholic societies and parishes, taught the faith, and administered the sacraments. It took many years for Carroll to exert his authority over the independent and entrepreneurial priests. Father Dennis Cahill was one of the problems, although not the worst. The real problems Carroll faced were the interlopers and the frauds. Authority then became what the novel was really about, for every character in Wizard Clip Haunting is challenged to acknowledge and live by the authority of natural law. Some do, some don't. Natural consequences follow.